Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our, our Religious Diversity Center panel series on becoming better together. This is the first in a series of panel discussions where we'll be exploring interfaith perspectives on current issues. And my name is Mark Rivers. I'll be your host this evening. I'm a trustee at the Religious Diversity Center. And I'm also a member of the Baha'i Faith. And in my day job, I'm the CFO at Fonterra. And we've put together a very interesting panel for you this evening. And in this first of the series, we want to explore some of the lessons that we've learned during the lockdown around COVID-19 and the pandemic, which was quite a big event for us here in Aotearoa. But also around the world. And so we'd like to explore with this panel what some of the lessons and learnings were from this experience and things that we can take with us so that we don't want to go back to normal, but that we can go back to better as a result of all of this. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the panel and already ask the first question, which the panel members will each be addressing. So the first question for this evening will be, what did you and your community learn during the COVID-19 lockdown, which you would like to continue after this current crisis subsides? And so first off from our panel is Dr. Hirini Ka. He's an Anglican priest and is also an advisor in the Faculty of Arts at the University of Auckland. Hirini, welcome to the panel. Please introduce yourself a little bit for us and tell us what you think about that first question.
Tēnā koe, Mark. Tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia ki te ngākau te tangata. Ia te menua te ao, ko te aroha te atu e tūtini a tātou katoa. A tia hei mauri ora. Ko Hirini ka hau, he ori no te taira awhiti. Kia ora, thank you, Mark, for your introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. In terms of my community, being Māori Anglicans across Aotearoa, we learned, I don't know if we learned as much as we relearned, as we often do, the power and the potential of our tikanga, of the practices passed down to us by our tipuna, by our ancestors, and the place it can play and does play in our lives. Two qualities in particular, I think manaakitanga is one. That's often used quite broadly. It's kindness, generosity, hospitality, but in its deeper meaning, it's to uphold and enhance the mana. And that is a quality that's passed down to us from creation. We saw manaakitanga being exhibited in big ways and small ways in local communities and whānau, even across the country. And that kept whānau and people alive. And the other quality is rangatiratanga, our autonomy, our self-determination. We saw communities exert their self-determination to keep themselves safe, particularly in very vulnerable Māori communities. And as a result of that, keeping ourselves safe. As we saw in lots of places around the world, particularly the United States, the poorest were the most vulnerable. And so that exercise in self-determination was really important. So I think in terms of what we learned and what we'd like to continue, I think those practices passed down to us continue to inform, shape, and be a big part of our world. So kia
ora. Thank you, Hirini. Yeah, those are great points, and certainly we've seen different parts of the community to be more or less affected from COVID. So there's a lot to learn from that, and remember. Thank you very much. So our next panelist is Noor Dutt. She is a member of the Sikh faith here in New Zealand and is also a registered financial advisor. So Noor, welcome to the panel.
Hey Mark, thank you so much for the introduction, and I'd just like to say a big hello to everyone who is watching, and thank you so much for being a part of this discussion tonight with our other panelists as well, and lovely host Mark. So your question, basically how our community or how the Sikh community got on during lockdown, I would say is pretty similar to how everyone else got on, considering that temples, churches, those facilities, they were closed. So we were unable to all go collectively as a community, which I think that was a bit of a hindrance. And I think at first that was a bit of a shock to a lot of people who usually go every weekend or every week, whether it's Sunday church, and to these events together as a community, but not being able to do that, I think that was a bit of a reality shock to everyone. But then I think slowly, as we learned to adapt as humans do, as we all do, we learned to adapt that, okay, this can be done from home as well, that it's okay to regularly practice your faith, whether it's through meditation, through chanting, through reading a script, that it can be done from home as well, through locally, because it's all about connecting from here. That's important, right? As long as you're connected from here, going out physically, you don't have to, such as this Zoom meeting, for example, that we're all doing it remotely, you don't have to physically be present anymore. Thankfully, this technology does have some sort of benefit for communities. And I think I saw a lot of churches were also doing live streams. And I think that just kind of helped communities remember or be able to tune into that, whether it's on YouTube as well, live stream, Facebook, and see, okay, what are other members of the community doing? Especially with things like selfless service, I saw a lot of communities getting together to distribute food, which I thought was an amazing example. Especially in our Sikh religion, we believe helping those that are unable to protect themselves or are oppressed or cannot help themselves, especially with those that were going without food or were unable to attend the supermarket or were at loss of jobs. So I think that community, just remembering that we're all in this together type of scenario, was able to help get us through this. And especially I think technology was one benefit that I found, that, you know, you can flick onto YouTube or read a script online, that you don't have to physically be present at the event to be able to be a part of your religion or your community, that it can be done remotely as long as you're connected inside. So I think that was our view from my point of, like, from my community, Sikh religion, that's how we kept going and giving each other faith and hope that it's all going to be okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Noor. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, just the reminder of the importance of connecting and finding different ways to connect. That term social distancing, I found a little bit of an odd term. It was more physical distancing, but actually socially connecting, even through new means. So that was a good reminder. Yeah. Thank you very much, Noor. Next, I'd like to introduce Amala Wrightson. Amala Sensei is a member of the Zen community and is a director of the Auckland Zen Center here in Auckland, and is also a trustee on the Religious Diversity Center with me. So thank you, Amala Sensei, for joining us on this panel today. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. I just wanted to add that I was chairperson for the Buddhist Council for 10 years, and so I spent a lot of time in intrafaith and interfaith work, and we've seen things grow in terms of connecting through. I don't know how many Zoom meetings I had during the lockdown, but it was a lot. And so we're finding we can now, as Noor said, we can connect even when we're not in the same place. We can connect through the heart. Just what we learned from lockdown. Somebody during the lockdown quoted the start of The Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And I think we really saw both sides during the lockdown. We saw incredible inequities being highlighted because of the pandemic. And then we also saw that governments could actually respond quickly when they really wanted to, when they needed to, like getting housing for rough sleepers, other things like that, getting kids computers. And so there was both the pain and then the response, which was really inspiring to see. During the lockdown, I talked to a lot of my students in New Zealand and overseas as well, in the United States and in Europe, and people were facing all kinds of uncertainties. And with the people in America, also no end in sight, no sort of plan for how they're going to get out of this. But what struck me in all those conversations was that their religious practice really equipped people to cope with impermanence and uncertainty, and people who were still secure for now actually really appreciated there being this pause in their lives, a chance to, people felt they were having a chance to live more simply and to consume less, to drive less, to experience contentment with just simple things like spending time with family, kind of rethinking things, meditating. And people have come out, a lot of people came out of lockdown making resolutions to continue to live more simply and more in a more connected kind of way. Also, we saw that we could come together for something and really all act en masse for the common good. And when we, and part of it was that when we understand what the threat is, then we can act together. I think that's going to stand us in really good stead for other challenges that we have. Back to you, Mark.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Amala Sensei. That's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. How we were kind of all forced to take a pause, and we started to appreciate the silence and the quiet moments again. Hopefully, that's something that we all make resolutions to continue in some form. Thank you. So now I'd like to introduce our fourth panelist, Imam Gamal Foda, who is the Imam at the Al Noor Mosque in Christchurch. And Imam Gamal, if you could introduce yourself and also address the first question, which is asking, what did you and your community learn from COVID-19 lockdown, and what would you like to continue with after the current crisis subsides? Welcome, Imam Gamal, to the panel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Actually, the lockdown was actually a big surprise for the Muslim community, because it started when we were preparing for the memorial service for the March 15th. And we had to cancel the memorial service. We only had on Friday, and then it was a big decision to make because we wanted to keep everybody safe, as well as we didn't, or I didn't want the community, the wider community, to say that, oh, the Muslim community, they had a big gathering and everyone will blame us. Plus, also, it will be frustrating if only few people comes to the memorial service, because everyone was scared of COVID-19. So it was a brave decision. We had to go into a big discussion with the community and even with the government to actually convince people, and it was the right. We have taken the right decision to protect everybody. So because we are part of the community, and we have to take the right decisions and be part of the wider community. So I thank the whole community for understanding this. And we received lots of letters of support, even not only from New Zealand, but also from Australia. And I think New Zealand have made the right decision. and we are the winners because we won together, and we deserve it. And not like many parts of the world now, people are still suffering. And during the lockdown, I had lots of Zoom meetings, and one of the most important one was the prayer service, the prayer for the people who actually lost their beloved ones during the, this crisis around the world. There is probably, I just wanted to introduce the fraternity, the document of fraternity. I'm not sure if you heard that. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and the Pope of Rome, from the Vatican, they came together just 1 month before 15th of March 2019. It was February, I think, in 2019. They signed the document. And this document, I think, is a very important document for all religious leaders so that they can come together on common terms to work together for the benefit of all the humanity. So during this, I called for the interfaith groups to make prayer for all people so that we can all be protected from COVID-19. And we shared it. It's on YouTube. It was really good. I think during the lockdown, for the first few days, or probably the first week, it was very hard. But after that, because I was very busy with lots of things during 2019 and early 2020, and then that was the first time for myself to be with my family, with my children, and to spend valuable time with them. I play soccer. I love soccer like many Egyptians. So we played a lot and we enjoyed a lot. And I had to sit down with them and talk to them for a long time. And it was the first Ramadan in my life in New Zealand to have my iftar, break my fasting with my family. So because every year we will spend the iftar in the mosque, and I don't, eat with my family. So that was the first time to eat with the family for years and years. So it was different, and the community also, they got very engaged with each other, and we created a closed group on Facebook, and everyone was contributing, and a competition for children and sharing, traditional dish and all these things, lots of baking. And so I think the community, although it was hard, but we tried our best to make it fun, rather than, so either you get sick or you stay at home. That's the so it was a hard time, as well as good time for me to spend with the family, and the Muslim community was hard for them, after, especially when the killer pleaded guilty during the lockdown, and the families did not attend the hearing, and it was frustrating for many families. But at least the person pleaded guilty, and everyone now is preparing, the impact statement to be, read out to the judge during the sentence.
Thank you, Imam Gamal, for those words. And it is incredible just to think, well, first of all of our hearts, are with you and the entire Muslim community from all that you have suffered and endured. I think it's just fascinating how the human experience is sometimes when we go through tragedy, how often that serve sometimes to bind us together even closer. And certainly we saw that last year at the tragedy of March 15th, how that brought not only New Zealand together and Aotearoa together in brotherhood with all of you, but really around the world, how it just moved everyone. It's incredible. And to see that again happen through COVID and the lockdown in so many ways, it's opened up the hearts in that same way somehow. And it's fascinating to see how that plays out. So thank you for your words. And your remarks about going through Ramadan during this period. The Baha'is also had their fasting month during this lockdown period, and I think Easter, which is historically a Lent period, and that's kind of symbolic as well, isn't it? It's almost like the whole world has gone through a fasting period symbolically, and somehow through that lockdown period, which and you see the merits of the wisdom behind that being such a part of pretty much every religious tradition in some way, and maybe that's something for us to think about. Let me just continue the conversation. I mean, we've heard now different, a lot of similarities actually in some of those different experiences from the different religious traditions and communities here from each of the panelists. And I wonder if there's some lessons to draw on from that of, in what ways does faith have a role in society what do we learn from this what is the role of faith in really helping to have a thriving, healthy society? I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Maybe we go through in the same order as before, starting with you, Hariri.
Kia ora, Mark. Kia ora koutou. Yeah, I think during COVID, this sense of kind of existential threat, this fear that this disease was present in our midst and what that meant for us, for our whānau, for our society. It's a very fearful time. I think in that time of reflection also, being locked down, having time to think. One way of thinking about that, I think, was faith, religion, gives us an answer to the why of things. Why are we here? Those kind of questions are particularly important because in our normal Western society, we're rushing from purchase to purchase, from transaction to transaction. We're so busy just being busy that we don't think about those things. I think though, as people of faith, we do think about those things. I think we have cultures, we have creation stories, we have texts that talk about those things. So, and in a time of fear, that kind of comes through. Why are we here again? What's the point of our existence in this time? And why should we stay alive? As challenging as that sounds, I think some of those questions, because a society that doesn't think about those things, doesn't answer those things, is, I think, very challenged. And a society like we've been through that process, I think, comes out better as a result of that thinking and that kōrero amongst ourselves. So kia ora, Mark.
Yeah, Noor, what do you think?
Yes, sorry, I just had a bit of a technical issue there. Yeah, I do agree with Dr. Hirini, and I think that part of reflection was a key part in all of this, being able to take a break and look back and remember either the divine name of those who you chant to or the scripts that you read, or I think something to fall back on is what religious perspective was able to support on, like a backbone kind of. So if you think you're falling back, it was something that I think that could uplift you and give you purpose, which I think is something that all religions have in common: purpose, knowing what your purpose is in life and not feeling devastated. And I think one thing for my community, what we kind of did is how we came together, and there were some temples that I knew that, people were still gravitating or meditating towards the temples, and they wanted to be there physically present. So, but obviously trying to be safe and social distancing and all, they started food groups. They were distributing food. We call it selfless seva in my religion, selfless service, forgiving service, giving back to the community. And I think that focus point was something that was helping push the communities or the people of our society forward, rather than feeling devastated that, oh no, COVID, that this is such a disaster, rather than treating it like a disaster, moving on, right? How, rather than seeing a problem and not doing anything and just having it as an exclamation mark, trying to find a solution towards it. Was I think that's how our communities work together. I think that goes for all communities, all religious faiths. I think that's what our main goal was, having a purpose, having unity amongst everyone was something that got everyone through it. Striving for justice and for prosperity for all was also that mindset. Having that goal in everyone's mind was pushing us towards, all New Zealanders, I think, were pushing towards that as well, making sure that we all are safe. And I think that's how our numbers reduced significantly, because we were all making a conscious effort to stay safe during this time. So I think that's how our community will move forward after having taken a step back from reality to focus on spiritual aspect, social aspect, maintaining that balance of well-being and mindfulness as well. Hope that kind of answers the question.
Thank you. Amala Sensei.
Yeah, I think the themes that across different religions are very similar. Our faith can build our inner strength so that we're not so reliant on conditions. We have this inner source that we can turn to when things kind of shut down. And also we can see difficulty as an opportunity to deepen our spiritual practice. And in Buddhism, at least, seclusion has been a big part of that forever, from the very beginning. And so to be having to stay at home could be turned around into something really, really an opportunity for deeper practice. And we also really sense that the power of community. Over the first couple of weeks of lockdown, we transferred all our activities onto online platforms, and so we were able to support each other. People going through all kinds of things, but could have a particular time of the day when they would come to their streaming or their Zoom meeting and connect with others, and there was a real thirst for that. And then another thing that we do in our faiths is we offer, or we envision, or we even embody a wider, broader, richer worldview to stand up against consumerism and materialism. And so these become more and more needed in times of real loss and change, and the sort of incredible turn of the whole planet really at this point. So yeah, we go back and draw on our faith so much more when things are uncomfortable and when we're suffering.
Thank you, Amala Sensei. Imam Kamal, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. I think sharing the same thing, all religions, they teach the same thing. And one time I was talking to somebody, and I said that if religion is not part of the solution, then our problems will not be solved. So I believe that religions are part of the solution to our problems today. And actually, we learned as the brothers here and the sister they mentioned, and I agree with them. We learned lots of things from the lockdown, and as Egyptians, we used to tell jokes a lot. And when I was young, there was we didn't have the people who work in the mosque, they don't get wages from the government, but the local people, at the end of every, harvesting their crops, they give something to the person who works for the mosque and the church. And this person, he was making the call prayer in the mosque. And if at the end of every season, he would go from, to the locality to collect, his gifts. And then one person said to him, "Oh, but I'm not a Muslim, I'm Christian." And he said, "But did you hear the prayer for the call for prayer?" He said, "Yes." I said, "And every Muslim hears the call for prayer. Does everybody come to the prayer?" He said, "No." Not every Muslim go to the mosque. And then he said, okay, that's it. You heard them. So with I'm sure in every religion like this, the people, they interpret the religion according to their own understanding. May I interpret the religion in my own way, and somebody else will get the meaning. Some people read between the lines, some people cannot. So is the case with lawyers as well, when they try to convince the judge, that this person is innocent, or there is, doubtfulness about this. So they give different arguments to make a point. Same thing in Islamic theology as well. People couldn't understand why the mosque can be closed. Can the mosque be closed? Yes, the mosque can be closed to protect lives. Even in the Islamic rulings, we read, if the person, and this is how I try to convince people, that they should accept this, because it's very hard for some people who cannot read between the lines that the mosque can be closed. So it says that in the Islamic tradition, that if you are praying and in the open, and then you see a person who is a blind person who is going to fall, in a ditch, you need to leave your prayer, go and save the person, come and continue your prayer. And you don't have to start from the beginning. If you are praying and you see a snake, going to hurt somebody, you need to leave your prayer, go and save the person, come back and continue your prayer. So saving lives, in other words, are far more important than praying in the mosque, especially with something like COVID-19 is around. So it was also very hard for people to understand that you can pray, because for Muslim you have to pray, side by side like this. There shouldn't be no gap between people. People should stand together. And then when we came back, people couldn't understand how can we leave a distance between me and the other person. And I said, okay, argue about this. I said, look, I am the Imam, and the whole world now, Muslims around the world, they are doing the same thing. So if Jamal is not going to change it in Christchurch, so we have to do it like this, because we want to keep everybody safe. So we learned that lives matter, and yes, you can leave your prayer in the mosque if people, if it is dangerous, to go and socialize with people. And also, we learn the flexibility of Islamic rulings, although people do not understand. Those people who are not specialized, in Islamic theology, they won't understand the flexibility of the rulings. They only learn the general rule, but they don't understand the exceptionals. We call them in the Islamic theology exceptions. So this is the rule, but there is an exception. People, they learn the rules, but they don't learn the exceptions. And this actually left to the people who are specialized in Islamic studies. Sorry for talking too much.
Thank you. That's wonderful thoughts there. Yeah, I think that's probably one thing we've learned again throughout all of this is sort of what's really important and what's not, and sort of the physical versus the spiritual, and what's most important rather than the physical building being closed is that our hearts are open and that we feel connected. That's even more important than the physical reality, and we can be next to each other even when we're not physically next to each other in prayer. Yeah, this very interesting, and just the importance of that spirit of service that comes through all of your comments. The role of faith in a healthy society, that it gives people a feeling of purpose and a feeling of how can I help my fellow brothers and sisters, and that itself is a form of worship. That's what I'm hearing through all of your comments. Wonderful. Maybe just continuing along, because you know, as we think about it, so as we try to return to better, go back to better, what are some ways do you think that we can foster greater feelings of solidarity and connectivity within our communities, but also across all of our communities, across our faith communities, to make a better Aotearoa? What do you think, Hirini? Kia ora.
Kia ora. I was thinking about this question, and I think I've got a bit of a challenge, I suppose, because the question is to make a better Aotearoa. You know, not just a better Australia or England, United States, or anywhere in the world. You know, we're talking about our specific context here. And we do have particular context on this land, this whenua. So just something to think about, I think, are our wāhi tapu, our sacred spaces, and the stories that those spaces contain here on this land. I think one of our challenges is for us all to think about those stories, to share those stories, to learn those stories together. Places like Parihaka, a site of struggle, a site of sadness, a site of love, a site of faith. You know, I think all faiths can kind of find a common ground there, a place to talk here in Aotearoa. And there are places like that in every community across this land. I would even say, and I hope this is appropriate, Imam Jamal. I think Al-Noor Mosque now is one of those sacred sites too, I think, for us all. A wāhi tapu, a sacred space, another place for us to remember, to come together. So that's a bit of a way to think about it, that we can share these stories of this land and share them together with one another. So kia ora, Mark.
Thank you. I think there's just a question from me. What role Sikhism can play in interfaith harmony and making religious diversity a healthy concept? And I think my answer to that question would be, first of all, relating ourselves back to my community, what I've grown up learning in Sikh religion. Sikh literally means to learn. Sikh means to learn. I am a Sikh. I'm growing, I'm learning every day. You know, we all make mistakes, we all learn. That's what the whole religion is basically primarily based on. And I think how we play a role in interfaith harmony is that we're open to everyone, like all religions are. We are not orthodox. Like, I think that's quite similar to what Aman said as well, that following separate rules, I think that's what discourages people, or what makes people a bit afraid of religion. But we are open. Our temples are called gurdwaras. They literally mean 4 doors, as in open to all, right? There's no rules, there's no cost to being associated with the Sikh. There's no cost to being a Sikh. It's a way of life, it's a way of lifestyle, it's a perspective. I like to think there's no right or wrong. It's a perspective on how you view things, how you view certain opinions, right? If no one is wrong, I always think. And I think that because we are so accepting, because we are so open, I think that's how we can play a healthy concept in all the interfaith communities, that we're open to all. And yeah, I think hopefully that answers that question there as well.
Going back to what Hirini was saying about wāhi tapu, the great thing about a place is it's somewhere where you can go and be with others. And that's a key thing with our interfaith work is really just getting together with each other and learning about each other and developing relationships and friendships. And it really has to be done one person at a time. It's not something you can generalize, but actually just connecting with people. And then when something arises, when there's some problem, then we already have a kind of a line of communication, and we can respond together, and we can speak truth to power where needed. You know, and we have more authority if we come together, and different faiths can find common ground in speaking up about injustice, about inequality, racism, violence, these sorts of things.
Thank you. Imam Jamal.
Yes, yeah. Actually, the common grounds, just let me start with the common grounds that Pamela said. And it's very important that people, or from my perspective of Islamic, we are not there to make people Muslim or change the religion of people. We are there to share things together, and we find the common grounds. And at the end of the day, people, it's their choice to choose which religion they follow, which faith they follow. And God created all of us, and we go back, and God is the judge. So we have to share the planet Earth together in peace, love each other, and where there is no space for racism, we have to address this issue as religious leaders. We need to address the issue of racism, and we need to spread love. And I said in one of my speeches that in a religion that teaches violence and killing innocent people is not a true religion, is not religion from God. The religions are there not to build walls. The religions are there to actually connect people together so that they can, as Irene said, that why we are here and the purpose of our life. We need to make sense of our life so that we can live in peace together.
Beautiful. Thank you, Imam Jamal. Those are wonderful comments. Yes. And there are some questions from the audience as well, which maybe I can incorporate into this as well. And some of you were speaking to this, but we've seen also sort of reverberate through different areas around Black Lives Matter and you know, kind of some of these inequalities, these cracks in society that maybe have become more obvious throughout all of this experience. And so just your reflections there, and maybe as sort of closing comments, you know, what would be reflections around how do we heal some of those wounds and emerge stronger? What is the role that faith plays in that regard? And just for you personally, what does back to better look like for you? And what advice would you give to those listening today about what we can do to make ourselves and make our communities better and stronger?
Kia ora, Mark. It's always the simple questions that are quite a big question to finish with, but I think again, it's been beautiful to hear the other speakers, to hear the whakaaro, the thoughts, to listen to one another, and I think there's something in there for us to keep listening, listening for what God might be telling us, listening for what our neighbor might be telling us, thinking those thoughts that we thought during lockdown, they haven't gone away. They're still present with us and just as relevant now as they were, even though our lives are getting back to the crazy consumerism that it was before. So I think holding on to those important moments that we learned and continuing with those values that became very important for us during the break as well, during the lockdown. So kia ora.
I'd just like to add, I think during a bit of this time, it just makes me reflect on what I've learned through Sikh religion. And one basic comment or concept that some of our gurus or gods had come up with was a concept called Midi and Bidi, which is balancing two swords, one political and one being spiritual, which I think are two key factors that have come up during this time, especially political being in the sense that the news have been all that we all have been reading, news headlines, news radio, and all about coronavirus, and that's what our focus has been. And second, spiritual, how we can learn to balance our mind with all this chaos going on around us. How can we meditate? How can we, in our religion, we meditate via reading scriptures or chanting. I'm sure all other faiths have different ways of doing so. But I think that's how I spiritually balance, and that's how our religion has taught us to balance despite all this chaos going around during coronavirus. And I think coming out from this, I think we all are probably coming out as a positive, if anything, learning that, okay, yes, this was a break, but now we are slowly resuming back to what we call reality. But I think in all honesty, I think we've all learned, we've all grown. And I think our way of moving forward, our way of communicating with others or living with others will definitely change for the better, I'm hoping. And I think that betterment for me comes from my religion and sticking to my roots and coming through with what I've learned over the years. So I think that's one way that we will look at moving forward towards a brighter future, perhaps.
In Buddhism, one of the sort of the two wings of the bird of taking flight as religious people are wisdom and compassion. And I think these two are needed so much right now because we really are at a pivot point in our history of human beings. One of the things that really concerns me is that huge amounts of money are now going to be spent on recovery packages, and these funds that governments are borrowing, we're borrowing them really from for generations who are going to have to pay them back. And the kind of effort and energy and money that's going into this is really a once in a generation kind of thing. And Christiana Figueras, who was the executive secretary of the Paris climate change talks, she said something very interesting. She said that pre-COVID, we had about 10 years to kind of get our act together and reduce emissions. But she says now we have 6 to 18 months because these huge stimulus packages must be put into not just creating jobs, but also creating a better future for our children and our grandchildren. And if we don't make them really reducing carbon, then we're going to set in stone a future in which there's going to be too much carbon to get the temperature down. And this seems not particularly religious kind of problem, but it actually is, because it's all about our paying attention and thinking in terms of not just ourselves, but generations to come. George Bombiot, who's a writer at The Guardian, he says, we don't need stimulus packages, we need survival packages. So my hope is that in this post-lockdown world, that we can continue to wake up to what is really important, and that we can have the courage to face the challenges that are we are going to encounter over these next few years. And we got through lockdown because we had a leader who was an extremely skillful communicator and who helped us to all understand why we needed to be under lockdown, what we needed to do. But we have this even bigger challenge coming up, and we need eloquent, clear leaders even more now, who can explain to us what's going on, so that we can really, really do what needs to be done out of our understanding of the situation. So the struggle goes on.
Yeah, let's start again from the leaders. And leaders can actually change, our perception of things. So the coming few years, we have big challenge that, as one of the panelists says, that all this huge amount of money that we spend, the many generations, in the next probably 25 years, we'll have to pay this money back. So we'll have to work hard to actually get a responsible leader who understand the economics and can actually lead the country and to safely, so that we can actually reduce the effect of the COVID-19 and in terms of financial. in Christchurch City Council, for example, there's 7.2 million given to the community, and in this the draft for the annual plan, now they increased to 360,000 for the communities to be given to the community to support them because of the job loss and stuff. So the leadership is very important on this, as well. Also, we need to educate ourselves on how actually to make it a better future for all of us. So working together as religious leaders as well is going to contribute to the spiritual life, because we need to do things together. Lots of things we can do together to make people be loving each other and to live in peace together. Community garden, for example, I do community garden, not Maori people, they're people from India, and here in Phillipstown School. So something that can connect us. We need to find ways to connect each other, even with the traditional stories, folklore, chanting, sports, we need to do things together so that we can, even the traditional food, traditional dish, the neighbors, the locality, the neighborhood, people, they need to do things together. And the colors and the religions are actually part of the wisdom of God, creating us different. And this is something that makes us stronger together.
Yeah, thank you, Imam. And I think just adding to that with the question of, with the event of the Black Lives Movement touching countries globally, what are the faith communities doing to strengthen and bridge that disconnection that COVID-19 highlighted? And I think setting all of us here together, I think that's a reminder of all of this, that we are here together, we are wanting to connect, we're wanting to share our stories, share our perspective, and then take that back to our religious groups so that we can spread those messages and ideas that we've all pulled together here from bits and pieces, from your thoughts, your ideas, from your religions, to all bring it all together.
Thank you so much, everyone. The mission statement of the Religious Diversity Center is as follows. The purpose of the Religious Diversity Center is to foster appreciation, understanding, and deeper relationships among the religious, spiritual, and secular communities in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and provide an independent and informed voice on religious and spiritual issues in the public sphere. And I just want to thank the panel for doing exactly that today, as in this first of a series of panels exploring interfaith views on current issues. And what an inspiring set of comments from all of you. Thank you so much for your time today and for inspiring us. I feel energized, and I think everyone who's listening feels the same way. I especially like the comments about the international food and the activities we can do together. So maybe we can find a space sometime soon where we can celebrate that together, all of us, and do that in our own communities here as well. So thank you so much, panel, on behalf of the Religious Diversity Center. We're very grateful for your time today, and look forward to speaking to you all again soon. And to all the viewers, thank you for participating, and hopefully you'll tune in for the next panel sessions as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.